All right. I am always excited, but today I'm especially excited because of who our guest is on the Pineapple Perspective with Troy Hooper featuring Pepper Lunch Restaurants as our title and primary sponsor here on this show. I am very lucky because I met this man, I think about 3.5 years ago on an app called Clubhouse. I found Chip Klose on Clubhouse holding court in the pandemic period, sort of trying to help independent restaurants find their footing, use that time to sort of retool themselves and just to share in community. Chip, welcome to the show. Glad to have you, my friend.
Glad to be here. And you're right. It's been a while since we were first connected, and now we've gotten to see each other in person all over the country. It's been very cool.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's growing up, right? From
We are.
kindergarten to here we are. Um, but yeah, so then there was a period there, Chip, where you held multiple rooms a week and different topics, and really built a community there. And you'd already had a community before. This podcast thing's nothing new to you, right? I mean, you've had a podcast. How many episodes are you in now? How many years have you been?
We are up to 360 some. We've been going for 5.5 years. We launched it in March of 2019.
Wow, wow, that was fortuitous to get that going and get your feet under you before the pandemic and all that. But yeah, so you were on Clubhouse and you were talking about your podcast. I started listening to your podcast, and since have been very, very fortunate to be on a couple of times now. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's taken me all that time to finally get my own podcast and decide let's go. So had to catch up with the big boys.
It's a natural fit. I mean, it's intuitive. You're a great speaker. You are insightful and curious, which I think is an important quality to have when you're doing this, is that you have people who know things, and naturally curious people just ask the next best question. So for me, it makes a lot of sense that you're doing this.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm only about 25 in, not 500. So give me a little grace. I can tell you, and no smoke being blown here, but my last appearance on your show is still one of my favorite appearances. I think you and I had a really, really good conversation. I think we really got into some meat and potatoes. I hope we'll hit a couple of topics today and do that. But man, I just felt like when we got done with that conversation, and then when I listened it back, boy, I just felt like we were really giving a lot of value, particularly to the independent folks out there running restaurants and trying to grow their business. I thought that was a really good conversation.
I totally agree. And I hope in the show notes, when you publish this episode, you will link to those couple of episodes that you appeared on, because I think they're all really good. You
Yeah.
were on a two episode arc all about franchising. So we did a whole episode on the franchisor side, a whole
Yep.
episode focusing on the franchisee side. I think those were really good as well. So I hope you include them, because
We will.
it's probably going to be sort of the preamble to what we're going to talk about here.
Well, let's get started here. We start every conversation with a couple of key questions. Then we'll get into a little bit about who you are and where you come from, and then a little bit about what you've got going on. We'll definitely hit some topics of the day and what you're seeing and hearing from the independents out there that you work with, et cetera. The first question we always ask everybody, Chip, is what does hospitality mean to you?
This was drilled into me very early on when I first moved to New York City, and I started working in fine dining. But for me, hospitality is about exceeding the guest expectations. I think it then brings empathy to the table. So you're thinking about, well, what are the guests expecting when they come in? And what about our communications, right? What about the lighting or the sign outside, or our pricing, or the way we communicate with them before they walk in the door? How are we setting those expectations, and then are we ready to exceed them? And if we do that, then we create value. And we can get into value because it's a wildly overused, misunderstood word, but I love that description. And that was pounded into me from the very first company that I worked for when I moved to New York. But for me, hospitality is about exceeding the guest expectations.
Well, I love that answer. I think it's absolutely true, and really being able to understand what your value proposition is and what the expectation you've set with that guest before they get there, right? And you actually talk a lot about that, which we'll get into. I really love that you talk a lot about the pre-arrival. It starts well before they make the reservation, and what they perceive you to be. You sort of answer number two, but maybe elaborate, thinking about your entire hospitality career, you know, that one answer is pretty direct, the exceeding of expectations. But if you took all of your hospitality experience and you rolled it into who you are today, talk a little bit about that formation, that where your beliefs in what hospitality looks like. What does exceeding expectations look like for Chip Klose, and where does that come from?
So I had the great fortune, right? I was raised in this industry really through fine dining. So I work, I mean, my very first job, like so many of us, was in restaurants, right? I was folding pizza boxes and washing, pans, in a pizza shop when I was in high school, waited tables through college. But really, I came to the industry when I moved to New York, right out of college, and I worked in fine dining. And what's cool about fine dining, what's cool about working in fine dining at a very high level, right? I was coming to New York right when the Michelin Guide was coming to New York. So like restaurants matter. Those restaurants matter. They have a national, international presence, right? What they do, how they're pushing boundaries, and all of that. And that was cool. That was cool to be a part of. So when we think about raising, exceeding the guest expectations, it's like, okay, somebody's going to come in and spend $155 per head, and they probably flew in from another city or another country, and that flight was not cheap, and their room in New York City is not cheap, and all the other things they're doing is not cheap. In addition to this meal, that's not cheap. So, man, how do we meet them where they are and still blow it out of the water? There was something cool about that. I also did a lot of restaurant openings, so I learned really early on how to do openings, and then that became my calling card. I did like a dozen openings over the course of my career, which was very formative as well, because you have to think really deeply about what do we want this to be, and then you've got to stay really flexible with, like I always say, right, we take as long as possible before we give the restaurant away. Because once we give it away, right, we design the space, we think about how we think it's going to behave. And then as soon as we open the doors, it's not ours anymore. It belongs to them. That the guests dictate how they're going to move the chairs where they want them. They're going to move the table setting where they want it. They're going to use certain pathways, to get from the podium to their table, from the table to the restroom. They're going to make it into what they want it to be. They're going to order what they want. They're going to sit or lounge or move quickly the way they want. So, really, number one, thinking really deeply about what we want it to be, and then staying really flexible to bend to what the crowd is telling us. Right? We're trying to serve them in a certain way, but they're going to tell us really quickly how they want to be served, and being able to stay nimble like that. So that was very formative to me. That's sort of like the entrepreneur's path as well, which is really what so many restaurant owners and operators are. They're entrepreneurs. They're trying to create something that doesn't exist. They're trying to serve audiences in new ways. And I think that very much helped shape me into sort of the business owner I am, the person I am, the coach that I am.
So, Chip, talk a little bit about that transition from day to day operations management. You started this podcast and you did it early 2019. So, even before the pandemic sort of would have even forced you out of a restaurant. So, where was that in the evolution? How did you make the transition out of restaurant day to day operations and into really what ultimately we'll get into where you are today?
Yeah, so the majority of my career was in operations on the floor. Again, started as a host, became a server, moved up to fine dining, was a captain, and then a manager, and then a maitre d'. And the majority of my career was spent opening restaurants, running restaurants. Around 2015, 16, I made a deliberate choice to step out of operations. My son was born in 2015. You've got a young child, you understand what that is. Um, the long hours, the late nights, the weekends, the holidays. I was like, I just can't do this for the duration of my son's young life. So I made a choice to step out of operations. I was getting really into marketing. And I realized that a lot of restaurants either didn't do marketing or didn't do marketing very well. And so I just thought there was an opportunity. Social media was becoming huge. Nobody knew how to use it. Nobody understood the new landscape of the paid tools that were available on there. um, we needed suddenly all restaurants needed sort of a steady stream of high quality content. Nobody was really set up to be able to do that, to provide that content creation that was required. So I started moonlighting. I started my business as a side hustle, marketing for restaurants. content creation, curation, publishing, really managing their social media feeds, and then their Google My Business. Nobody really knew that stuff. Running ads, running their email, optimizing websites, building websites. So I really started doing that. And I did that for many, many years, until I realized, hey, I'm leaving all this operational knowledge on the table. And I think actually what people could benefit from is doing both sides, right? Really understanding that there is a relationship between operations and marketing, that the best marketing ideas have to be executed operationally. The best operations need to be properly marketed. So that if we create something really great, we need an arm to be able to tell people what's so great about it and why it's so great and who should care about it. So that's when I really stepped back in. So stepped out of that agency model into like a consulting model where I was doing everything for people. And that led me right up to the pandemic. And all of my clients who were in New York City pretty much all disappeared. Either they closed, they furloughed everybody and sort of went dark for a while, or the ones that were open desperately needed help, but didn't really have the revenue to be able to provide help. I still kept helping them. And I picked up all kinds of clients all around the country because I had had that podcast. And my whole model went from consulting, being on the ground, on the floor, in the restaurants, helping them, to now doing everything via Zoom and phone. And I realized that the most important areas that I could help them with, we could handle from a distance. So my business changed literally over the course of 6 months. It changed completely, and now it is what it is.
Yeah, you've built something really special, and not we'll kind of get to that overarching end result with a lot of services and products that you offer. But the book you wrote was no short part of this whole system, and I think you had a pretty good idea what you wanted to accomplish and where you wanted to go. And it's been a real joy to watch you build that from a distance, and get our catch ups at these conferences and stuff, and find out how big this has become. I mean, obviously, you found that mostly that you work with independents, and that lots of independents need help. Look, my phone rings every day. LinkedIn, hey, do you have 15 minutes? I've got a question, and
Mm-hmm.
boy, 90% of the time you can predict what some of the top 5 questions are going to be. And there's just not a lot of folks out there. I mean, we have some friends that are doing podcasts and YouTube shows and writing ebooks and stuff like you've done as well. But, there's just not a real formal place for people to go. And I think you've created one of the few environments where people can choose their path and get involved and learn from you and your team and your network around you. Talk about the book. I know you wanted to write a book for a while. I was excited. I guess I was a little surprised that it was all marketing, so to speak. Because I've heard you talk about operations and how that interplay, like you mentioned,
Yep.
it's so huge. And you move between those two topics pretty seamlessly. Talk about what's the book called? Where can people get it? Of course, but also what was your thing? What was the impetus for this?
Well, and I appreciate you asking about it because I'm really proud of the book, the look of it, the feel of it, the content within it. I will say you can find the book anywhere, right? You can go to Amazon, you can find it. It's on Audible. You'll hear my beautiful voice reading this book. At the very end, let's save it to the end. I'll tell people where they can go get it for free. If you just pay for the shipping, I will send it to you for free. I will sign it myself. I will package it up myself. So you can get it from anywhere, but if you want to get it from me directly for free, I'll tell you how to get that at the end. The book is obviously part of a 1-2 punch. I'm working on the operations book, the profitability book, as we speak. So when I look at restaurants, right, there's something simple about running a profitable restaurant. Not easy, but simple. You have to create something that people want. You have to be able to do it profitably, right? Like make it for less than you charge for, and you need to make it exciting enough where people come back over and over and can't help but tell people, right? When we look at the restaurant industry, and we talk a lot about why restaurants fail and why restaurants struggle, right? They're two things, and they're separate. I think most restaurants struggle because they don't have a path to profitability. They don't understand how much revenue they need to generate and how to manage their key expenses, specifically prime cost, COGS, and labor, how to keep those in line to run consistently profitable every single month. That's sort of a long-term problem. I think a lot of restaurants just sort of chug along, not really doing as well as they can. But most restaurants fail, and we hear these failure rates, right? Like 80% of all restaurants fail in the first 5 years, right? These huge, massive things. And I think that comes from product market fit, not understanding what people want or need, not understanding what people are going to be willing to pay for. So if there's a huge amount of restaurants that fail early on because they don't know that, that's where I wanted to start. That's why we started with that book. So the book is called The Restaurant Marketing Mindset. It's in 4 different parts, and it really is a series of mindset shifts that gets the reader to a place where they go, I don't understand marketing. I don't do marketing in my restaurant. To a place where they go, yep, you are. If you sell things to other human beings, you have to figure out which human beings are most apt to buy from you and how to persuade them to buy your stuff as opposed to someone else's stuff. You are naturally doing it. There's a way to be more intentional about it, to do it more effectively than perhaps what you're doing. And that's what the book is all about. But it comes from this place of saying, hey, listen, let's not be crazy. Marketing is very simple, not easy. There's sophistication, there's nuance and all of that. For me, marketing, and I say this a lot recently, I say marketing is about 2 things. Number 1, getting people to raise their hand. And number 2, getting people to follow you. Right? So you walk into a room, there's 100 people in the room, and you say, hey, show of hands. Who here likes barbecue? And a handful of people raise their hands. You're like, perfect. My barbecue people, follow me. That's all you do. Who likes this? Hey, guess what? I have this. Now, that's all we're trying to do in marketing. Can we do that? Yeah, sometimes we can walk into a room of 100 people and get them to follow you to the food truck out front. Obviously, there's more nuance, there's more sophistication required, but all we're trying to do is get them to raise their hand who wants or needs the thing you have, and then get them to change their behavior. Meaning they used to go to that place, now they're going to come to your place, or they're happily in this food court and you're trying to get them to come outside to your food truck, or whatever that is. That's all we're trying to do. And when you boil it down to really simple terms like that, I think it makes people go, oh yeah, well, that's not hard. Okay, then how do we do that? How do we do that in my neighborhood? How do we do that on this block? How do we do that on the internet? How do we then great, what would we have to say or do or show people, or how would we convince them to quote unquote follow us, to change their behavior, to walk outside, to cross the street, to go to somewhere they haven't been? That's all marketing is at its most basic. And that's where the book really starts, of saying, like, let's not pretend it's anything fancier than it is. All we're trying to do is get people to raise their hands and change their behavior.
Yeah, that's huge. I think starting from that mindset perspective is really important because people come with their own biases towards marketing or towards social media. I think you joined me in being a disciple and follower of Gary Vee. It's real simple. Don't have any ego about where people want to discover things and learn about things. If it's TikTok, it's TikTok. If it's YouTube, it's YouTube. If it's a billboard, it's a billboard. But you have to know where people are and are looking for the thing you're offering to get the most eyes and on what it is you're trying to sell, right? And I think starting with the mindset shift and getting some understanding at the basics. I can only imagine after the ops book, there's got to be a marketing number 2 book out there eventually for Chip. I don't see you not writing a few more books in your career.
The hard thing about marketing is that, so the book, The Restaurant Marketing Mindset, it's a strategic approach. There's very little tactical, because if I wrote a whole bunch of tactics, they'd all be outdated in 6 months or 6 years, and I want this thing to live on. What we do is we share the strategies, sort of the approaches to these things, and say, great, do we understand what we're trying to do here? Again, when I give my spiel there of marketing is about getting people to raise their hand and follow you, people go, oh, great. Okay. So how might I get people to raise their hand? How might I get them to follow me? And that you'll iterate over and over and over again. But if I can get you to change the way you think about marketing, to embrace just that simple 2-step framework, it makes it seem a lot more approachable and palatable. That was the whole crux. That's the whole crux of the book.
Yeah, I think pulling the veil back is really important. I think that's what you do really well. So let's set the table for who and what Chip is today. What is this business? because I want to get into some topics of the day and maybe some practical, tactical things as well. But let's chop it up about what's sort of going on in the industry, especially among independents. And you've got your hand on a couple hundred of them directly every day.
Yeah.
You're hearing their woes, you're hearing their concerns, you're hearing the areas that they need to learn about, that they feel inept about or uneducated about. But I want to set the table so that everybody understands what is the ecosystem of Chip Klose and the Restaurant Strategy Company today.
Yeah. So Restaurant Strategy is a podcast. I'm the host of the Restaurant Strategy podcast. But Restaurant Strategy is also a company that now offers coaching programs to independent restaurant owners and operators. To your point, the Gary V model is that you can't discriminate as to where people like to get their information. If people are out there trying to learn, trying to level up, this is something I learned from our mutual friend, Sean Walchef, right? He really helped shape how I think about this more so than even Gary Vaynerchuk. But the idea is that people will learn wherever they want to learn or however they want to learn. So you have to be everywhere if you're committed to helping them, which I am. Right. I've worked for some big companies and I've had some great mentors, and I've worked for some bad companies and worked for some bad managers, bad leaders. And so if I can help show people the things I've learned, and I'm happy to do that. So the Restaurant Strategy Podcast, 300 and some episodes, twice a week, 2 new episodes every single week. We're committed to providing incredible free content, over and over and over and over again. So if that's what you like, 20, 30-minute increments just to learn something new every day and put it into practice, God be with you. Go do that. We're on Instagram and TikTok. I'm giving free advice every single day, all of that. Then the coaching program I run, it's a group coaching format. It's called the P3 Mastermind. We've already put 150 people through the program. We have 160 some people currently enrolled in the program. Like, the program works, and people come in and they work with us for a minimum of 6 months. Specifically, it's geared towards busy restaurants that have been around for a while. They're generating a lot of revenue, meaning they make a lot of hungry people happy, but they struggle with profitability. And it's one of the biggest problems I see with restaurants is that everybody's getting paid except for the owners. And so we simply show them a way to arrange their books to be more fiscally responsible, to, manage their revenue, manage their expenses, so that they can make a healthy, consistent, predictable return every single month. And we do that by meeting with them once a week, 2 hours every week in a group setting. So me and a whole bunch of other restaurant owners, where they get to learn from me, I get to learn from them, they get to learn from each other. It's an incredible community. We do 2 in-person events every year where we descend upon a different city. So we all get to be in the same room together, learn in real time. We get to complement the learnings of the mastermind in a sort of semi-educational format. And that's what we've done. And over the last, I'll say, we're in our 4th year now of running that program. I mean, it's like tripled every single year. And so, 10 people the first year we launched it, 24 the next year we launched it, 95 the next year we launched it. Already to date, today, actually, as we're recording this, we just brought the 110th member into the program just this year. So, like, the thing is growing like crazy because the thing works, because the things we teach do not require magic wands and pixie dust. It's just sound business practices. I got my MBA. I worked for a lot of really big companies. I'm just teaching them the stuff that I have learned in very easy to implement ways. So the systems we teach, the structures we teach, the playbooks we teach. So that's the ecosystem, right? The podcast and then the coaching program. So if you just want to go and get free content, the podcast, the Instagram channel, the TikTok channel, there's tons of resources out there. And if you want some more hand holding, if you really want somebody to walk side by side with you, if you want the accountability and sort of the community that exists, that's what the mastermind is all about.
Amazing. Awesome. That gives you a lot of perspective. Where did the idea of a day come from? Because I love the TikTok, and you may not know this. I actually support all of my friends and all the content creators that I think are bringing value from a anonymous account. So you won't see Troy Hooper liking your stuff. You'll see another name, but I like and comment, and sometimes, very often, I'm actually the first comment because it pops up within a couple minutes of you posting it. But I love this idea. I'm actually kind of jealous you came up with it. But I think it's phenomenal. And by the way, the idea of the day every day is really freaking good. If you're an independent restaurant operator or you're running a multinational conglomerate, like a Pepper Lunch, there's something in there every day for somebody. It's a good reminder, even if you know
Yep.
it. Oh, yeah, dang, I don't do that anymore. We should get back to that. Where did the
Yep.
idea of a day come from? That's a big commitment, my friend.
It is a big commitment. It's easier than I thought and sometimes harder than I thought it would be. To everybody who doesn't know, if you follow at Restaurant Strategy on Instagram or TikTok, I share an idea of the day every single day. It's usually anywhere between 1 and 3 minutes, and it's just a little something to get you to think outside the box or tighten up the screws in one specific area. Basically, I like series. When I'm on as a consumer, as I'm a user on different pages, I like going somewhere and says, "Hey, I golf, right? People know that I golf. I'm not very good, but I follow a lot of golf channels, and so I like where a guy, a guru, a PGA professional will come forward and say, "Hey, today I'm going to teach you how to X, Y, and Z." Right, and they just give me one thing. I say, "Oh, that's really great. Yeah, yeah. And I can watch for a minute. I can learn a little bit more. It'll lodge in the back of my brain. I'll remember it next time I go out to the golf course." And so sometimes if you come in and you say, you have to overhaul everything, it's like, well, that's too overwhelming. Sometimes if I just say, hey, let's just focus on this one thing, right? We did a thing the other day about data acquisition, right? The customer acquisition without data acquisition is a loss. And so let's talk about what that means. That means that when a walk-in comes in and says, hey, can we get a table for two? It's really easy to say on a quiet Tuesday, yeah, absolutely. Follow me right this way. Because you're just excited that two people walked in. But the right move there, and I talked about when I was a maitre d' in New York City at the front door, couple walks in and says, hey, do you have room for a table for two? Right? The first thing I would say is, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming in. My name is Chip. And I'd stick out my hand and shake their hand. And then they would have to say, oh, my name's Max. Hi, Max. What's your last name? Oh, it's Jones. Max Jones. Nice to have you. Listen, can we just get you in our system? What's your phone number? And what's the best email to reach you? Perfect. Now, next time you come in or next time you want to come in, just give a call or send an email. Now we've got your stuff. We know who you are, right? It took 30 seconds every time I did it. And I remember all my hosts and even the other managers would look at me crooked. They're like, just get him in, get him seated. I'm like, taking 30 seconds to, number one, be more hospitable. Listen, let's talk about the pineapple here, right? Let's not make it transactional. So when Max comes in with his girlfriend and says, hey, do you have a table for two? And I say, yes, right this way. Come sit at this table. It's transactional. Like, we want food. I want your money. Follow me. But it's not. It's in New York City. There are 50,000 other places you could have gone for dinner. Hi, my name is Chip. Thanks for picking us. Do you guys live in the area? Oh, cool. Listen, let me get your information. We're being human, because actually that's what keeps a restaurant alive. It's the relationship. So if I can show people one thing of like, hey, when a walk-in comes in, you have a choice there. You have an opportunity at the beginning. So if you've just been taught that you say, yeah, absolutely, right this way, you're totally wrong. There's an opportunity to, number one, be more human, to begin a real relationship, introduce yourself, ask them what their name is, find out if they live in the area, they just new to the area, what made them come in, and get them in there so that we can remarket to them in the future. So we can continue nurturing that relationship. So that's an idea of like one of these ideas that I would share. And it's just getting people to think outside the box. I think it's something I'm good at. I'm good at thinking outside the box and coming up with new ways of thinking about things that we just take for granted. And I think we have to be willing to try new things or to learn from people. So that's what I do. I just turn on the microphone, turn on the camera, and share those every single day. And I think it's fun.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. If nothing else, I think it has the potential of lighting a spark of curiosity. You may send somebody down a rabbit hole. Oh, wait a minute. What, who else does that? Or how? And, we all just learn from each other. I mean, ultimately, along the lines of what you just said, people don't think about how quick serve fast casual restaurants could be more hospitable, provide actual hospitality. We're moving to an all kiosk model. Well, how are we going to give hospitality in our kiosk? Well, one, we're going to educate the guests better, right? The employees are just not as reliable to, engage the way you just described in that way, at least consistently, right? The kiosk will do the questions and answers and show you things and give you pretty pictures and walk you through an experience. But we're
I
actually
love
adding a
that.
hospitality. Yeah, we're adding a hospitality host. Term stolen from Sean Walchef's Cali Barbecue.
Sure.
We're going to greet folks. Our employees, I'll say this at Pepper Lunch particularly, are excited. They like the brand. They know that people who come for the first time have an experience in store, that they're going to enjoy it, that it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be interesting. They're going to want to know more about how to curate their own experience in the future, and they're going to want to come back and do that. So let's share in that excitement. When somebody comes in wide-eyed, welcome them, greet them. It looks like you haven't been here before. Can I explain to you what you're about to experience? I'm excited for you. I can't wait to see what you think when you leave, right? And then you get them on the way out. Hey, well, was it everything? Oh my God, it was better than I expected.
Troy,
Engage, right? And
it's so true. It's so true. When we talk about technology, right? Technology has impacted every area, every industry in the world. And restaurants like to pretend, right? We sort of, stand on whatever the term is. We
ceremony,
like to
yes.
stand on ceremony. I couldn't think of the word. We like to think we're above it. We're different, right? We're like, well, we're not. We're in the hospitality industry. It's total bunk. We are we can be a victim, or we can be the recipient of technology. At the end of the day, almost every industry in the world is better because the technological advances that have happened, the progress that has been made over the last 30 years. I don't know anyone who thinks that TV was better 30 years ago. We have more shows, we have better shows, we can watch them whenever we want on whatever device we want. It's fundamentally better, right? We could talk about movies, cinema, right? Like the movies just are in the theaters for a little while and then disappear. They are that way because we get more movies and they come home, they come to our living room faster, which I don't have to tell you. When you are the parent of a young child, it's like, well, to go see a movie, it's $17 per person plus the $120 I have to pay the babysitter because we're going to go do dinner and a movie. Like, is this movie worth $35? Maybe. Is this movie worth $155 or $160? I don't know that that's true. Like, technology is better. When you talk about the kiosks, right? I love this, right? When you go in and you go up to the register, right? And you want to ask a question, and then you're relying on the cashier to try to describe the dish. Hey, I'm looking at this. Can you tell me about that? I'm not sure what I want. Like, well, it's sort of like, you fill in the blank with hundreds of units. Can you confirm that every cashier is going to say the right thing to answer the questions? Or, or can you optimize the screens to have beautiful pictures and videos and descriptions that will in a much clearer way articulate the answers to the questions these people are looking for? The answer is overwhelmingly, emphatically yes. The kiosks can do it better. So, like, it's just better where we're going. It's better.
yeah, and I'll say, look, it's not what you do, it's how you do it, and it's how you
Yes.
use it and how you implement it. I can tell you that Ziosk is a brand of tabletop kiosks that a lot of big brands are using. Yard House here in California, Red Robin, I think they use Ziosk or something similar. And I can tell you that I've been to restaurants, casual restaurants with full service, servers are supposed to take care of you, have these things on the table, and they are an asset of information, education, convenience, etc. Or I've seen them used, programmed, and put out there in a way that they're actually a barrier to the experience. They took everything took longer. I knew less. I was frustrated. Why the hell is this thing on my table? It's getting in my way. Like, the same device can be implemented and utilized as a part of a system that it's additive, or it can be this thing that gets in the way of everything because they're trying to use it in place of the server or in place of any form of information or education, etc. So
Yeah,
it's not the technology to be damned. It's the system, it's the process, it's the operator and how
and
they've designed it and whether they thought about it from the consumer and the employee's use case perspective,
totally.
right?
And Troy, you know what I say? I say to owners and operators, it's like, if you don't like it, it's because it's not better than what you already have. And you should demand more of our technology partners, because that's what they are. right? If we are going to buy them, partner with them, pay them, we are a client and they should deliver. So people say, oh, I don't like the QR codes and the online ordering on the phone. Look, that's all right, because it's not better than what already exists. But there is something that's better. Again, the perfect example is kiosk. I always use McDonald's as the example. Like, the way McDonald's has used their app and their drive-through infrastructure is fundamentally more efficient and more convenient than what it was 30 years ago. And McDonald's exists for convenience and efficiency. Now we realize that the drive-through was just fairly inefficient 30 years ago. Now we've got a better use of it, that I can order on the app, I can place the order, I get there, I just give them my 4-digit code, I run right up to the window, I get it, it's already paid for, it's already prepared, and it's ready just that quick. It's the best version of McDonald's that has ever existed. The kiosks and their big, beautiful pictures and sort of the gamification of like swiping
Yeah.
things and ticking things, it's better than the experience
Well,
of
it gets
going
me
up
with that
to a
apple pie every
cashier.
time.
Yeah, the Apple. So 100%.
Right?
Rather
I
than,
can't close out my check without being offered an apple pie or a milkshake.
but the resistance to it, right? It's like, let's not pretend that the register experience with a cashier who was underpaid and didn't want to be there, let's not pretend that that interaction, that transaction was better than what McDonald's
Right.
gave us in the kiosks. It's not. It wasn't. They couldn't answer our questions. They weren't interested in answering our questions. The kiosk is very much interested in giving us the information that we need to know, and to the point of the apple pie, even some information we didn't realize we wanted to know.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it because we're excited to be able to share with people how they can customize their product, what sides and add-ons we have, the great new beverage program we have, et cetera. We want to just make sure everybody's getting all the information so they can ultimately the
And
guest can have the best experience, and so can the employee.
totally. And Pepper Lunch is such a great example because it's a brand. There's something new about it, especially in the US market in particular, right? That there's novelty to it, but there's also sort of confusion and some distance from the consumer to that. I mean, I've been there a handful of times, and it's just, once you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
But you
No, it
need to be
requires a little
converted
education, Yeah.
100%. It's
Yeah,
not
and
burgers
how
and
we give that
fries.
education that will matter. So, Chip, you got a couple million listeners and followers. You got readers of the book and the audio book. You got the mastermind attendees. You're at all of these conferences. You get a chance to not only speak to, but then speak with the attendees, which gives you a lot of insight, gives you a lot of opportunity to listen. Talk to us about 1 to 3 topics that are top of mind for the restaurant operator today that you keep hearing people need to know more about. These operators are coming to you pretty consistently, and there seems to be a theme here. What's the modern top 3 concerns,
Yeah.
questions, areas people need to learn?
Yeah. So number one, it's the way people think about marketing, that they think in terms of butts and seats, butts and seats, butts and seats, um, not understanding that what they're thinking is customer acquisition, but the bigger opportunity that they're completely avoiding is customer retention. That if we need butts and seats, who cares if they're old butts or new butts? And there's that old saying, it's cheaper to keep a
Yep.
customer than to go find a new one. I think there's an incredible opportunity for independent owners and operators to focus on the retention piece, which, just like we said, walk-in comes in, party of 2. If you get them seated, it's just transactional. You didn't start a relationship with them. But by introducing yourself, telling them your name, asking their name, getting their information, right, you begin a real relationship. You've swapped names, you've introduced yourselves. So I think the number one thing, right, first thing I'll say is that marketing thing, is that we keep thinking of butts and seats, butts and seats, butts and seats, and we're ignoring, right, we're sacrificing retention by focusing so much on customer acquisition. But it's the hardest to do, the most expensive, and then the most time consuming. But retention is so much easier because we have our customers for, even in a quick service model, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, which is way longer than the average shopper in a retail setting is there for the most part. So, and in full service or fine dining restaurants, it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It's such an opportunity to make an impression and really begin a relationship. Customer retention beats acquisition, hands down. And that's something I feel like I've done a lot of education on. The next thing I would say is profitability, in that I think I think there's a misunderstanding of how we build a profitable restaurant. That like the equation is, or the recipe is more revenue, less expenses equals a surplus. The surplus is profit. How do we as an owner, us as an organization make money? More revenue, less expenses. And while that is the recipe, it doesn't work out that way. I think we have to be much more specific in targeting revenue goals every single day. That adds up to, giant goals for the month or the year, and then keeping those expenses tethered, right? Key expenses like COGS and labor tethered to the revenue levels we hit. That's the recipe for having a consistently profitable restaurant at high revenue levels, at low revenue levels. It ensures that you make a healthy return. So that's the other thing that I feel like I'm doing a lot of education on, and I feel like people are now warming up to, beginning to understand. And I go to people saying, this is how Applebee's operates. This is how Hard Rock operates. This is they know what they need to make at the end of the day. Their stock price requires it
every day.
And so they just work backwards, and they say, well, if this is what I need to make every day, then this is what I need to generate in revenue. And it means I can't spend any more than this number, because I still need to hit that number at the bottom line, that operating profit, that EBITDA. And so educating people about that is the second thing that I feel like I'm seeing real epiphanies over.
For me, one of the ones we always start with, and we track very closely as well, is covers per day, right? Customers per day or covers per day, because you can distill it down to how many humans do I need to serve today at an average plate price or average cover ticket price, right? Basket size, and that's something that most restaurateurs don't realize that they should be tracking, but that gives them real perspective on a day to day. Ask why. Why did we serve 10 less people today, or this Tuesday versus last Tuesday, et cetera? So I think that's really important.
100%. And you go back to one of your first questions: is what experiences were formative to what I believe now is those early experiences. I was working in restaurants that had a monthly rent of 50K, 60K, 80K plus. So
Yep.
there's a real requirement to pound the reservation book. That it was made very clear to me that I did not get paid to stand up in the front of the restaurant, look good in a suit. That I stood up front and looked good in a suit to make sure that I could impress the people coming in, build relationships, because I had a responsibility to get a certain amount of covers into the restaurant every single night. And it was like, I don't care how you do it, you just need to do it. So building relationships, working the book, working with the marketing team, building, building conversations with concierges, on and on and on. So it's about working backwards for me. So it's that marketing misunderstanding, that profitability misunderstanding. The last thing I will say to your question, right, these 3 points, is that, and this is a little bit squishier, this is a little woo-woo, but what we do is extraordinary, and no one needs it. It is a luxury. It's an indulgence. 100 years ago, people went out to dinner 2 or 3 times a year. People consume food service, right? So food made outside of the home. Either they go to a restaurant or they have food prepared and brought into them, on average 2 to 3 times a week. Those are the averages. It's very clear. So 2 to 3 times a year 100 years ago, 2 to 3 times a week now in the year 2024. What we have is an indulgence. It's a luxury, saying, hey, I'm going to pay someone extra because they went and got all the schooling, they came up with the recipes, shopped for the stuff, prepped the stuff, cooked the stuff, brought it to me, gave me everything I needed while I was there, and then cleaned up after me. Like, that's a luxury. And we're able to say, hey man, it's a Thursday night, I'm really tired, long day of work, let's just go out and grab a bite and have someone else do all the work. We could feed a family of 4 for like $15 if we just went to the supermarket, but we choose to go out and have better food, more interesting food somewhere. So what we have is not a commodity. And I wish people really talked about it more like a luxury, like an indulgence, because it's special. So we already charge much more for the stuff than they could otherwise get, right? They could get chicken, rice, beans for $15 at a supermarket. For the same dish, we have to charge 4x that in order to pay all the overhead and the labor and all of that. So let's stop pretending that there's a price threshold. Let's stop pretending that we have to keep our prices down. what it is a luxury. And if we're going to be profitable, we need to be profitable. We need to charge something. There's a conversation about that I feel like we're just starting to wake to. And I think it's really important for the future of the industry.
Value, right? Understand, are you giving the value? Is this worth it to me? Is Lazy Dog brunch for $135 on a Sunday worth it for the three of us? And when that goes up, did the service go up in cost? Did you elevate my experience? I'll leave it with this. Recognition's the most valuable free thing you have as an operator. Recognizing your customer. I don't care if you're fast casual, QSR, the people at my Chick-fil-A know me before I get to the window. They don't need to see my name on an app. They see the blue truck come around the corner, like, Troy's here.
Yep.
The folks at Lazy Dog see my son walk through that door, and they don't put the spoon in the hot mac and cheese anymore because I said, hey, it's a little hot when he goes to put it in his mouth. Maybe the metal spoon shouldn't be 400 degrees, And so now every employee in the building knows, don't put the spoon in Austin's bowl, Recognition is one of the most powerful forms of marketing. Just take the time to know your customer, as you said so eloquently several times throughout this conversation.
Somebody smarter than me said, our job is to make people feel important, right? And P.S., they are, right? They are the center, right? You are the center of your son's universe, right? There is nobody more important to him than his parents. Yeah. That's true for every one of our customers. And so if the kid can make them feel that important, right? I feel that with my son. We can also do the same thing with them. And just think about how powerful that is, right? That our job is to make people feel seen, to make people feel important. And you know what? It's actually not that hard to do.
Chip, you've brought a ton of value. I'm really excited for my audience to get to know you if they didn't already. We end these conversations with a few little quick questions. I've got a couple in my mind for you, not written down, not prepared, just thoughtfully as we've chatted. Because you're in one of the biggest, best cities in the world, having access and experience in New York City. If I get on a plane and land in New York this weekend, where would you tell me to go eat first?
The best dining room in all of New York City is the front room at Gramercy Tavern. So Gramercy Tavern is 30 years young. It's Danny Meyer's second restaurant. They have one restaurant, right? One building, two concepts. There's the tavern up front, and then the fine dining, the Michelin star restaurant in the back. And the front room, there's nothing like it. It's a limited menu. Everything comes off a wood fire stove. So fresh flowers everywhere, great wine list, great cocktails, tons of great local beers on tap. And you can't, it's unmistakable, the smell of like that fire going. It's like on a summer day, there's nothing better. On a cold winter day, there's nothing better. It's the best room in New York City.
Similar but different. If I could snap my fingers and you were playing golf anywhere in the world tomorrow, what's the course you want to play the most?
I have never been to Scotland, and it's sort of like you got to make the pilgrimage once. So it would probably be out there. I got to see it the way it was originally designed. I will get there eventually, but I'd want to go and see the way it was meant to be.
Last question is, when does P3 Mastermind come to San Diego, California?
It's a great question. We're coming west. I don't know if we're going to do California. California's hard. Here's the difficulty. When we do these events, so we do 2 live events every year, every January, every July, we don't make money on the events, right? So we have sponsors that help us throw the event, but we have to do it on, we have to really do it on a budget. And we like throwing a lot of parties. We like being in a cool space. So we're not in some anodyne, washed out hotel ballroom. We get cool spaces. We also want money to be able to support the local businesses. So all of that. Southern California, I don't have to tell you, is very expensive. If we could figure out a way to do it on a budget, I would be there in a second.
We might have some friends in the restaurant business anyway. We can make the meals and parties affordable. I don't know about hotels and flights though. That's the
hotels and flights are okay. It's the event venue and the restaurants throw the parties. All right, we'll talk offline.
Sounds great. We'll love to have you find your way out west. If not California, maybe it's Vegas. Obviously, easy to get to. But Chip, it's been a real pleasure. Really looking forward to having you back on the show. I know you've always got great ideas and you're keeping up with what's going on in the industry. We're all grateful for everything you do, and wish you nothing but great success on all these programs and offerings that you provide.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And before we let people go, because I told them I would tell them how to get a free copy of the book, go to the Instagram page at Restaurant Strategy. Just DM the word book. We've got an automation set up that will automatically send you the link where you can go and get the book for free. You get into our community for free for the first month. If you want to cancel it after that, before it starts charging the regular monthly fee, so be it. But you get the book for free, just pay shipping, and you get all these incredible resources within that community for a month. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome stuff. If you're running a restaurant, there's absolutely no reason not to do that right now. Definitely go to the link, find Restaurant Strategy, and DM book. That's awesome. Easy peasy. Makes it too simple. All right, Chip. Looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for listening to The Pineapple Perspective. If you loved today's episode, leave a review and a 5-star rating. I look forward to welcoming you back next time.